The phrase take it to the bank means that someone has absolute certainty in the value of whatever their proposition is. They have this certainty because they know that when they send a check to the bank will give them that money. In other words, the phrase take it to the bank means that there is 100% credibility behind the statement that person made. Currently, many students in America are entirely avoiding taking a certain decision to the bank, specifically a decision over student loans. Today's question is, does the US federal student loan program expand opportunity for Americans? And as we will see by looking at this program actually violates the principle of take it to the bank. Because when federal loans are made, it does not mean students no longer need to make these loans credible. They no longer need to demonstrate that they will actually earn or repay the loans that were made in the first place. To better understand this question, we'll look at three separate points. Starting with the point of what these loans are. Second, looking at the faults of these loans. And third, talking about how responsibility is the solution to these problems. So, let's look at this first point. What are these federal student loans? CNBC gives us some background, explaining on April 29 that the federal government has recently made changes to the student loan program, capping these student loans at $257,000. It notes that these loans are made by the federal government to students in order so that they can afford a college education. And this recent news notes the federal government has limited the amount and the extent of these loans. So these loans can't be made for as large of an amount of money as they previously could. Business Insider on April 30 reported a similar process happening, noting that the federal government has been working on over the past few months on restructuring its federal student loan program. So the overall principle we see here is that student loans made by the government, these federal student loans are made by the government given to students in order so that they can afford a college education. So now that we've looked at what these loans are, let's move on second to their faults. What is so wrong about loans such as these? They do increase opportunity, the question of today. They do allow students to go to college. So what's bad about that? The answer is simple. It's that not every student deserves to go to college. Or if they do, they must prove that what they're doing is valuable. They must be able to take the value they will earn from college, they must be able to take that value to the bank. They must prove that in the long run they will make their money back and repay it. So the crucial problem is this. When students make a deal with the federal government in order to have loans, they have much less pressure in order to get their money back. Because if you have noticed, the federal government doesn't particularly care whether or not it goes into debt. The federal government simply hands out money and has little concern over whether it gets it back or not. Meanwhile, private companies, so banks, for example, that give out money to students for student loans, expect that money back. They demand that money back eventually. Because if they don't get money back from students, then eventually those banks will go out of business. What this means is that banks and other institutions that make loans to students in order for the students to go to college look at the students to specifically see if those students are pursuing a valuable degree or doing something that will enhance their earning potential in the future. And the third, look at whether or not those students have a credible past in repaying those loans. If the students don't meet any of those qualifications, then those banks and institutions won't make a loan to the students. And although this is unfortunate that not every student can go to college, it is the truth. Not every student can go to college. And if a student does not have a history of paying back their loans and cannot demonstrate that they will be able to pay back their loans after college, they should not receive a loan. And the federal government is the one that has completely reversed this principle and demanded that every college student deserves an education, no matter whether or not they have credibility. This gets us to our third point for today, our third and final point, that of responsibility. We've seen the faults. And the fault of the student loan program is exactly that it doesn't demand responsibility from students. It tells students that that effectively they deserve whatever they want. If they want a college education, the federal government should give them a loan. The problem with this is it gives students it creates irresponsibility in students. As economist Milton Friedman noted in his book Capitalism and Freedom, he advocates for college loans to be made on a private basis, noting that this creates responsibility. When students are actually held accountable to prove that in the future this college education will increase their value to the extent that the students will be able to pay back the loan. Responsibility is an important issue in today's society. We don't believe in responsibility anymore because we believe that we deserve things without actually earning them. We believe that the government or that other institutions must give us our needs. But welcome to the world where you don't where the government and institutions don't give you everything. At least they shouldn't. You as a human being have been given the power to earn things on your own. You have been given the power to work hard, to educate yourself, and to become a better person. And with those abilities, you yourself can go to college. You can make a living, and you have the freedom, and you have the ability to increase your own opportunity. As an American citizen, that is truly your duty. Not to depend on the government to create opportunity for you, but for you to pursue your own opportunity. As we've seen by looking at these 3 points of the student loans given out, looking at their faults, and finally talking about how responsibility is necessary, we've seen that it is in fact necessary that American citizens embrace the principle, take it to the bank. Because when they take it to the bank, they become more responsible than they would